Chart performance doesn't necessarily define the legacy of an album, as some of the most beloved and influential albums never had chart hits. In this video, we'll look at 8 of the biggest albums with no top 10 singles. Britney by Britney Spears. When Britney Spears released her 3rd studio album Britney in November 2001, she was at the height of her fame. The album debuted on number 1 on the Billboard 200, making her the first female artist in history to have her first 3 albums debut at the top. It sold over 745,000 copies in its first week and has since been certified 4 times platinum in the US. The album marked her transition from a teen pop princess to a more mature superstar. But despite its massive sales, the album surprisingly failed to produce a top 10 hit on the Billboard Hot 100. The lead single I'm a Slave for You, produced by the Neptunes, was a drastic shift in her sound. It is now considered a turning point in her career. It peaked at number 27 on the Hot 100, a surprisingly low position given its iconic music video, VMA performance, and cultural impact. Other singles like Overprotected, I Am Not a Girl, Not Yet a Woman, and Boys all charted modestly but failed to break into the top 40. These songs did receive significant radio play, were played non-stop on MTV, but chart-wise, they didn't match the smash success of her earlier hits. In hindsight, Britney has become a fan favorite and is often praised for its experimental sound. The lack of a top 10 hit didn't stop it from becoming one of the most impactful pop albums of the early 2000s. 4 by Beyoncé. Beyoncé's 4, released in June 2011, was a creative pivot from her previous, more commercial projects. Rather than chase radio trends, she leaned into a more soul and 90s R&B sound, crafting a layered album. 4 debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, becoming her 4th consecutive chart-topping album as a solo artist, and sold 310,000 copies in its first week. Despite its strong debut and critical acclaim, the album remains the only Beyoncé solo album that didn't produce a top 10 single on the Billboard Hot 100. The album's lead single, Run the World Girls, was a bold first move, but it peaked at only number 29 on the Hot 100. Follow-up singles like Best Thing I Never Had performed slightly better, peaking at number 16, and Love on Top eventually climbed to number 20, largely thanks to her viral VMA pregnancy reveal performance. However, none of the singles managed to crack the top 10, a rare occurrence for a Beyoncé album. When the album was first released, it was considered as somewhat of a flop, but over the years, it has become legendary. Many now consider it one of her most cohesive albums, with Love on Top and I Care becoming classics in her discography. The album laid the foundation for Beyoncé's full creative reinvention that would come with her self-titled visual album in 2013. Though it didn't deliver a radio smash, 4 proved that Beyoncé could drop a cohesive, culturally impactful project. Control by SZA. SZA's debut studio album Control, released in June 2017, redefined what vulnerability and honesty could sound like in modern R&B. With its dreamy production and conversational lyricism, it grew to become a modern classic over time. The album debuted on number 3 on the Billboard 200, selling just 60,000 units in its first week, but it has since spent 425 weeks on the chart, a rare achievement for any R&B project, let alone a debut. Despite the massive cultural and commercial impact of Control, not a single song from the album cracked the Billboard Hot 100's top 10. Its biggest hit, Love Galore featuring Travis Scott, peaked at number 32, while The Weeknd reached number 29. These placements were modest at the time, but songs from the album have become classics over time, with Broken Clocks now sitting on 886 million streams on Spotify. As of mid-2025, Control has been certified 5 times platinum by the RIAA, and its influence on a new generation of R&B artists is undeniable. More than just a successful debut, Control is a complete body of work that has stood the test of time. Control's ability to make an enduring impact without a top 10 hit speaks volumes about the album's legacy. Blonde by Frank Ocean. Few albums in the 2010s were as anticipated, discussed, and dissected as Frank Ocean's Blonde. Released independently in August 2016, after delivering his last album with Def Jam and immediately signing with Apple Music, it changed traditional industry structures in every way. It had no lead single, no radio push, minimal visuals, and barely any promotion. But it debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, moving 276,000 units in its first week, and has since become one of the most celebrated albums of the decade. Despite its critical acclaim and streaming longevity, Blonde didn't produce a single top 10 hit on the Hot 100. In fact, The only single from the album was Nikes, which peaked at number 79. Ivy peaked at number 80 on the Hot 100, and Pink and White, the biggest hit from the album, peaked at number 82. The album functioned more like a single cohesive piece than a collection of radio hits. Blonde's lack of chart toppers only adds to its legacy. Frank Ocean rewrote the rulebook, proving an artist could go silent for years and still influence the sound of a generation. It remains a modern classic. 4 by One Direction. Released in November 2014, 4 marked a pivotal moment in One Direction's career. It was their 4th studio album, and the final one with Zayn Malik, before his departure from the group. The album debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, with 387,000 units in its first week, making One Direction the first group in history to debut their first 4 albums at number 1 on the Billboard 200. Despite this commercial dominance and a very dedicated fan base, none of the singles from 4 managed to break into the Billboard Hot 100's top 10. The lead single Steal My Girl peaked at number 13, a respectable position, but fell short of the top 10. The follow-up single Night Changes only managed to reach number 31. These tracks performed well on streaming platforms and radio, but they didn't catch fire in the same way hits from their previous albums did. Earlier hits like What Makes You Beautiful and Story of My Life had reached the top 10 before, signaled a more mature turn in their sound, so they didn't have the same level of domination. Despite its lack of a top 10 single, All remains a fan favorite and has aged really well. Melodrama by Lorde. Lorde's sophomore album Melodrama was a masterpiece. After the minimalist teen angst of Pure Heroin, she returned with a heartbreak-filled concept album that was named one of the best pop albums of the 2010s. Produced primarily with Jack Antonoff, the album debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, selling 109,000 units in its first week, and it went on to be nominated for Album of the Year at the 2018 Grammys. The album was praised for its lyricism and smooth sound, and got a 91 out of 100 score on Metacritic. Despite its critical success, Melodrama shockingly produced no top 10 singles on the Hot 100. Its lead single Greenlight only managed to peak at number 19, though I remember it being a bigger hit. Other standouts like Perfect Places and Homemade Dynamite, even with the remix featuring Khalid, SZA, and Post Malone, failed to crack the Billboard Hot 100. The album's strength was not in radio hits, but in its cohesion, something that continues to bring new listeners to Lorde's music. Years since its release, Melodrama has been recognized as one of the most defining pop albums, and its influence on artists like Olivia Rodrigo, Billie Eilish, and Gracie Abrams is clear. While it may not have had big hits, Melodrama proved that you don't need a top 10 hit to make a timeless record. 2014 Forest Hills Drive by J. Cole. J. Cole's 2014 Forest Hills Drive is arguably one of the most iconic hip-hop albums of the 2010s. It is also one of the most commercially successful hip-hop albums to never generate a top 10 single. Released with minimal promotion, the album debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, selling 353,000 units in its first week. It was praised for its deeply personal storytelling and cohesive narrative, but despite its massive cultural and commercial impact, none of its singles reached the top 10. Tracks like No Role Models, which peaked at number 36, Wet Dreams, which peaked at number 61, and Love Yours, which never even touched the Hot 100, all became fan favorites. They are widely considered classics in Cole's catalog. No Role Models in particular eventually went 6 times platinum and became a sleeper hit that far outlived its chart peak, now sitting on 2.6 billion Spotify streams, which makes it Cole's biggest song. But at the time of the album's release, Cole's organic fan-centric promo strategies meant that the album's tracks didn't follow the traditional route. What makes 2014 Forest Hills Drive even more remarkable is its enduring legacy. The album has since been certified 6 times platinum and was nominated for Best Rap Album at the Grammys. It also became a defining album for Cole, helping him sell out arenas without relying on hits. 17 by XXXTentacion. XXXTentacion 17 was a deeply personal and emotionally raw album that showed X had more range than the aggressive SoundCloud rap style that first put him on the map. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, selling 87,000 units in its first week, and eventually earned triple platinum status in the US, a major achievement for a project with no Hot 100 top 10 singles. Its stripped-down production and themes of depression and heartbreak connected with a massive audience, especially Gen Gen Z. Despite its commercial success, none of the tracks from 17 cracked the top 10. The closest was Jocelyn Flores, which peaked at number 19 on the Hot 100. The album's cohesive mood and slow emotional songs weren't really meant for radio. Over time, 17 has gained cult status, becoming one of the most streamed albums in Spotify history, accumulating close to 10 billion streams to date. Which of the biggest albums with no top 10 singles did I miss? Tell me in the comments below.